After another thrilling victory for the Chicago Bulls, a comeback victory at that after being 20 points down, I want to spend some time looking at how the Chicago Bulls have really answered the early test. A bigger test are coming down the road for the Chicago Bulls team. We're going to talk about it all and more right after this.
You are now tuned in to Chicago Bulls Central, your number one place for all Chicago Bulls news and content.
What's going on, Bulls fans? Welcome to another episode of Chicago Bulls Central, your number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related. I'm the host here, Haize, but more importantly, you guys can follow the channel at Bulls Central Pod on every social media platform we happen to be on. With that being said, let's go ahead and get into this content for today, y'all. And I want to start off with this, man. The Bulls, after another thrilling victory and being 3-2 right now, I know people are enamored with being the third team in the East via record and all that. Like, I'm not really too worried about that. It's too early to really worry about standings for me, right? Like, celebrate everything you guys want to celebrate, right? Not taking nothing away from that. But I think right now, the thing that I'm more excited about is how a lot of the questions that we had coming into the season for the Bulls have so far been answered and answered really well. Now, that does not mean it's going to hold out true for the whole entire season, and I'll explain that more as we go along. But the Bulls are answering the early test. They are. Being above 500 for the first time in 2 years, right? Since November of 2022. Like, you got to celebrate that, and you got to acknowledge how the Bulls have gotten there. Now, what tests have they answered? I think when you came into the season, there was, of course, the biggest question of the talk around a new look offense. Was it going to be real? And so far through the first 5 games of the season, it's real. The Chicago Bulls are leading the league in pace. They're top 10 in both 3-point attempts and 3-point percentage. We're 16th in points per game at 113. Number 1 in rebounds at 51.6. And we're 6th in assists at 27.5. But more than just the stats, right? One of the bigger questions was, how was this team going to come together? How was it all going to work on the basketball court and fit, considering you were moving Coby White to changing his role yet again for another season? You were bringing in Josh Giddey, right? And then you have had questions around Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic. And all those questions have gotten answers, right? Coby and Josh Giddey, while it still has its moments, but I can tell you what, how many games have you watched and you said, oh man, Coby White isn't getting in rhythm because he doesn't have the ball. Like, Coby White has shot badly, but he's still gotten the shots and he's gotten good looks. Now, he's been inconsistent in two out of these 5 games, but throughout most of that, he still looked like Coby White, right? That was a huge question coming into the season is, after Coby White's breakout year, was he going to be able to do it with his role changing yet again? And I tell you what, Coby White so far through the season averaging 19 points per game. He's doing 4.5 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 1.5 steals as well. He's only turning the ball over 2.5 times. Also, when you compare his percentages as well to last year, right? Last year he was getting 15.3 shots per game. So far, with this new offense and how many possessions we're getting in each game, he's still averaging 15.2. He shot the ball 44.7% last year, 43.4 this year from 3-point range. That's a little bit down, but we know we've had the extremely cold nights. He was 37.6% from 3 last year, taking 7 per game. He's taking 9.5 per game, but hitting at a 34% clip. Basically, Coby White is giving about the same production. The assist numbers are down from 5.1 to 4.4. But if for people that are asking, is Coby White going to be able to still be Coby White throughout the start of the season? Yes, both the good and the bad, right? So now we need to find a way to eliminate some of the same bad things we saw last year. But for the most part, Coby White has been able to be Coby White. And that is an important part of this, right? And that's something that I was looking at early into the season. And now I just look at how he gets in flows and if he's going to be in rhythm more. And I look at it less as, hey, is the role indicative of him? He scored over 20 points in 3 out of the Bulls' first 5 games, and only one of those games against the OKC Thunder did he score in single digits. Coby White is Coby White. And then you look at Zach LaVine, right? Of course, the guy that everybody's talked a lot of shit about over the course of the offseason. You still get it. Even when Zach LaVine does good things, you still get some Bulls fans. He's still not worth max money. He's been on the max contract now for 3 years. He's on it. And as a matter of fact, his $45 million max, we're seeing role players sign for $35 million. So, it is what it is when it comes down to that. There are always going to be people who are naysayers. But then the question is Zach LaVine going to get back to being a good player, right? after averaging 19 points per game last year on 45% shooting and from the field and 35% shooting from three, so far through these 5 games, Zach LaVine is, again, much like with Coby, the balance there, 15 shots per game, 51% overall from the field, and 43% from three-point range. That is the highest three-point shooting field goal percentage and field goal percentage of his career. Again, 5 games. It doesn't mean that it's going to stay true. That's why I'm saying that they've passed the early test so far, right? 23 points per game, which is his highest total, higher than last year. So he's playing really good in that area, and he's being an efficient player. The turnovers, of course, got to get down. Not saying that these players are playing perfect, but I'm saying for the questions that came in. Vooch, right? Nikola Vucevic. Everybody had questions about Nikola Vucevic, right? Moving to a more up-tempo style. Is he going to fit in? Is he going to be able to play? Is his defense going to be trash? The answer to that latter one is yes. His defense is indeed still trash. But 20 points per game for Nikola Vucevic on over 50% shooting from the field and 45.8% from three-point range, taking 4.8 three-pointers per game. That is the second highest three-point attempt rate in his career, and that was in his first year when he averaged 5.8, and we know how that went, right? So Nikola Vucevic as well is another player that's still able to be Vooch, but is refining because of the, again, 15.2 shots per game, right, is that he's finding a way to be efficient with the opportunities that he's given, right? So that's another early question that the Bulls are answering so far. And then you get to Josh Giddey, right? The guy, the much aligned player that people just like to talk shit about Josh Giddey through 5 games this season. The question is he going to be able to get closer to what he did in 2022-23? And so far the answer is yes. That season he averaged 16.5 points per game. He's averaging 15.5 this season on 48% shooting from the field and 58.8% shooting from three, taking 3.5 three-pointers per game. He's also giving you 8.5 rebounds per game, 5.8 assists per game, and he's only turning the ball over 2 times per game. Need to get that down. And listen, Josh Giddey is still leaving points on the board. He got to finish around the rim a little bit better. Even that's kind of overblown by some Bulls fans, but it's still something that's there, right? But it is what it is. Josh Giddey playing extremely well for the Chicago Bulls and within the system. And of course, you got the stories like Lonzo Ball coming back, looking solid, right? That was a huge question coming into the season. And then is Billy Donovan going to be committed to the youth movement? And we saw Torrey Craig for the first time this season. We have not seen Javon Carter. We're not seeing Chris Duarte, right? Like the players that are leading in minutes coming off that bench are the players that we basically wanted coming into the season. You got Ayo, you got Jalen Smith, you got Julian Phillips averaging 14 minutes per game, right? Dalen Terry's getting almost 9 minutes per game. Bucelis, yeah, people aren't happy at the 6 minutes per game he's getting, but again, he's playing ahead of some of the veterans that you would have expected with how you've watched Billy Donovan execute. And so, at the end of the day, this Bulls team, Jalen Smith as well, another guy that was he going to be able to come in and produce at the way that we need to from a backup big. 14 points per game on highly efficient shooting is 11.5 points per game on 14 minutes per game. Jalen Smith is bringing to this team, and he's doing that on 53% shooting from the field and 57% shooting from three. He's come in and answered that test. And so far as well, one of the bigger questions coming into the season, how bad will the Chicago Bulls defense be? They're 7th in defensive rating in the league, but they are allowing the 25th most points at 120 points per game. But the thing is, while right now they're averaging more points than they scored, we've seen the Bulls when it matters the most. They step up defensively and they're able to give you something defensively. And that's another thing that I wasn't quite sure that this team was going to be able to do at this early part of the season, is be able to give that type of defensive effort when the game's on the line. And we've seen it. While they have some defensive lapses over the course of the game, we just do. We have our shortcomings defensively. We are not a great one-on-one team, defensive team. But Wes Unseld Jr. has done a really good job at getting this team to buy in when it matters the most, right? When this team needs to get on in a defensive rhythm to get some easy shots for themselves, they're doing that, right? When the game's on the line and closest, we see some of the best defensive ball that we see from this Bulls team. So they got to try to find a way to make that more consistent throughout 4 quarters. But again, early test. They're passing it, right? And so, listen, and bigger tests are coming. In no way does this mean that the Bulls are going to be this team for the entirety of the season. We have a lot of players shooting probably percentages from three that they're not going to be able to keep up this season. You got Jalen Smith, Nikola Vucevic, and Josh Giddey all shooting above 50% from 3-point range. That's going to be really hard to maintain, right? That's just typically not what it's going to be. But the thing that you're seeing, right, is that 3-point shooting, especially in key moments when the Bulls get out in runs, when we are hitting teams with a barrage of threes, we're no longer losing the math battles that we lost in prior years when, we're able to now compete in that 3-point. And even a player like Josh Giddey, as long as he's hitting the three, semi-reliable. Like, he's hitting it at it's not realistic to sustain. It's unsustainable at the rate he's hitting them right now. But I tell you what, even if Josh Giddey drops 20% and hits it at a 38, 39% clip, that's enough to keep defenses honest. And that's all Josh Giddey really has to do with his 3-point shooting, is be able to hit it enough to where your defense have to play you honestly. Right now, when teams are leaving Josh Giddey open, he's taking those shots, he's making them, and then they have to adjust to that. And then he's starting to get creative with his passing and how he uses his body to manipulate the defense and things like that. Josh Giddey is really a quarterback out there. How you look at in the NFL, how quarterbacks manipulate the pocket, right? They maneuver the pocket around to try to get the defense to follow them around, to open up things down the field. Josh Giddey does that in the half court for the Chicago Bulls. And so it's been really, really special to see. And then a player like Ayo Dosunmu, who I haven't mentioned yet. Ayo's really starting to come into his own. His role changed drastically this year. He moved from being a starter for the majority of last season, even though he started off coming off the bench, to now he's firmly planted in that 6-man role. And it started off rough for Ayo Dosunmu, right? But Ayo still getting 26 minutes per game, which is really good, especially coming off the bench, right? He's starting to come around for the Chicago Bulls, and that's what you like to see. In the last 2 games, he's gotten double-digit scoring attempts in 12 and 10 points respectively. He's shooting over 50% from the field in the last couple of games. The 3-point shot is still not there consistently for him. He did go 2 of 4 against the Grizzlies. He was 0 for 1 against the Orlando Magic. I think that 3-point shooting, I hope that is going to come around for him some. And as his 3-point shooting increases, even if Vooch or Jalen Smith's or Josh Giddey starts declining, hopefully Ayo Dosunmu is going to be able to meet him there. But listen, outside of the offensive part of it, Ayo Dosunmu defensively has been a dog all absolute season, the whole entire season. And so that's a big thing. And Patrick Williams, I know this is going to be triggering for some Bulls fans, right? Because I know right now hating on Patrick Williams is the thing to do, right? Because his offense is shit. I mean, we're just going to be frank in that. Patrick Williams' offense has been shitty. He's shooting the worst percentage of his career at 29% from the field. He's shooting 36% from 3, which is solid enough, right? He's averaging 7 points, 6 rebounds, which 6 rebounds is the highest rebounding total of his career. He's averaging over a steal per game, which is the highest in his career. The defense is legit for Patrick Williams. And I need people, much like with Giddey, and I say the blind hate, I need people to be able to park their expectations of P. Will based off being selected 4th overall and look at what Patrick Williams is bringing as a role player. And that's what he is right now. I want to be clear here, right? In no way am I trying to glaze the situation and make it seem like, oh, Patrick Williams is so much better than everybody gives him credit for. No, but what he's doing is an important role on this team. Patrick Williams' defensive versatility, especially in guarding power forwards and centers, something that a lot of people try to say that he couldn't do, has been so important for this Bulls team when they get out in those defensive runs and needs those defensive stops. Wes Unseld Jr., Patrick Williams is starting to become one of Wes Unseld Jr.'s favorite defensive tools out there. And when you watch it for how Wes Unseld is using Patrick Williams in certain matchups, it's really helping the Chicago Bulls win games. Now, of course, that does not mean that we should not still want Patrick Williams to be better and more efficient offensively. He's getting almost 7 shots per game, hitting that at a 30% clip. Even if you get that up to 40%, he's probably going to be in 10, 11 points per game. So we need Patrick Williams to be a more efficient player on the offensive side. But let's not overlook what Patrick Williams is bringing defensively. He is bringing something defensively. Now, I understand why the calls to start Modest or to start Julian are there and getting loud, right? But I think when you step back and remove the expectations with that 4th overall pick drafting and just judge Pat based off what he's really helping this Bulls team at, he's playing adequately for a 5th option on offense and a role player. That's what he is. I know people are going to say, well, Haize, we gave him $90 million. Yeah, I hate to tell you this, but that $18 million contract, that's a role player contract. We're seeing role players sign for $30 million, right? it is what it is. I know Bulls fans are going to be upset about the money. That's just my personal opinion. You guys are right to judge it. Like, it is what it is, right? And you're right to want more from a player drafted 4th overall, but I think at some point in time that he didn't choose to be drafted 4th overall. The Bulls drafted him mainly because of what he was showing defensively in that position and the versatility there. And he's doing that. Probably better than what he's done at any point in the season in the way that Wes Unseld Jr. is using him. So just wanted to point those things out. Really solid so far in the Bulls answering the test so far. But the reason why I keep saying so far is because the bigger tests are coming. Over the Bulls' next 9 games, they have games against the Mavs, the Wolves, 2 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Knicks, and the Houston Rockets. Those are all going to be very important games. By November 17th, the Bulls are going to face mainly playoff teams. Now, yes, we have some down games in that. The next game's against Brooklyn, but Brooklyn's beaten teams, surprisingly enough, lately. Utah Jazz are always a tough matchup, but the Bulls are about to get into a place where they're playing most of the games on the road at that, and they're playing against teams that are all really slated to be playoff teams. And that's going to be fun to see how the Bulls answer this next set of tests for them this season. And we'll see if the Bulls are up to that, if they're ready for it, because I think that's going to be an important stretch. And then also, like I said through November 17th where we face the Houston Rockets in Chicago, but then we have a game against Detroit. Then we got a game against Milwaukee. Then we go back to facing Memphis, then Washington, then Orlando, then Boston, right? This all the way through November, through really December, because we got 2 games against Boston back-to-backs. We're home and home at the end of December. We're going to really know who this Bulls team is. But the fact that they're answering these early tests now, right, that they're building chemistry, camaraderie, and confidence now, that's what you're seeing mostly from this team is the confidence building that they're doing. It's huge to really see, right? It's really big to see that. And so the Bulls are going to have to continue to get to that point. They're going to have to continue to just improve and refine. That's where the Bulls are right now. Getting those turnovers down is going to help your offense so much, right? Keep sharing the rock around as players start improving and getting things back. That's going to be really big for this Bulls team. But I want to hear from you guys on this one. When you look at the early test for the Chicago Bulls, how much confidence has that instilled in you and this team? Are you more confident than what you were coming into the scene? And which player really has surprised you the most so far in the season? Let me know that down below. Now, with that said, injuries are a part of basketball. It's part of every NBA team season. Every team has to deal with injuries to some varying degree. And while Zach LaVine had a shoulder thing yesterday, and not blaming his 2 for 9 shooting on that, he still has to be better than that. He did get x-rays after the game, and it came back clear, right? So that's really good when it comes down to that. Zach LaVine said that the shoulder is sore, and he'll see how it feels before the Bulls face off against the Brooklyn Nets on Friday. But that's setting the stage that Zach LaVine could sit in that game. And when you look at how the medical staff has played this so far, typically if it's anything that could turn into something nagging, they're trying to sit you. And, it's really to see how Zach LaVine recovers today, leading in the shoot around. I expect it to kind of be more of a game time decision for Zach LaVine until we hear something else. But, injuries are a part of it. And the Bulls weathered the injury of Jalen and not having him and Lonzo pretty well yesterday. But a injury to Zach LaVine that would put him out for a game or two is going to come. The Bulls are going to have to play very differently, especially when you look at, Lonzo being out and Jalen being out. So, we'll see what the Bulls do in that, right? I think ultimately Billy Donovan is trusting these young players. And I think if Zach LaVine does have to sit against Brooklyn, you're probably going to see Julian Phillips start at the 3. That's just kind of where my mind goes with that. Now, I could be wrong on it. You could see Torrey Craig come in there as the veteran. We saw Billy Donovan use Torrey Craig a little bit last game as kind of a veteran he trusts, right? So that could be the case. But we'll see. I'm not going to get too far into that, but good thing the x-rays came back negative. So there's nothing structural wrong with that. It's just the pain thing. And so depending on how Zach LaVine's pain tolerance is, that would determine if he's going to end up playing on Friday against Brooklyn. And then you got Jalen Smith, who missed yesterday's game, not due to the initial sprained ankle that was reported that had him questionable for this game, but because of a knee injury, right? I won't say injury, maybe some knee pain there, right? When it comes down to it. And again, this is a sign of the Bulls front office playing it safe. He was already, they had announced that he will be active because of the ankle. And then because of him dinging up his knee and shoot around, they shut him down, right? They're like, hey, you already had one thing. We were going to let you play. This knee thing, we're shutting you down. You're not playing in this game. Adama, this is your call up, right? So, we'll see how it goes with Jalen. I do think that they're going to play it safe. As I said before, when it was just the ankle, You got a big man with a lower body injury. You want to play it safe with that, because those big men, especially a mobile big man like Jalen Smith, you want to play it really safe with that. And then, of course, we know Lonzo Ball. He's out for 10 days, right? That started yesterday. He can come back. We'll see if he comes back around the 7th, of November. But I think ultimately, like the Bulls, at least in the first game, weathered the storm. And the way that they did that was they played Josh Giddey more minutes, right? They staggered Coby White with the bench some, and they allowed Ayo Dosunmu to really step into that backup point guard position, and it changed the way they had to play a little bit. But the Bulls weathered it at least in one game, and that was a game against one of the best defensive teams in the game of basketball in the Orlando Magic. So, we'll see how it goes with that. But overall, listen, throughout the early part of this season, things are working really freaking well for the Chicago Bulls. And I, for one, have loved to see what we've seen from this team and how this is growing and developing. We just got to keep it going. And if they can keep it going, it's going to be fun to watch. It's going to be fun to break down. And, we're shaped up for a fun season. I think that's the ultimate thing that you can really take away from all of this, is the Bulls are playing a fun game of fun brand of basketball, but they're having fun as well. And that's contagious. I don't know for you guys, right? I can't speak for everyone. But when you see your favorite team have fun in what they're doing, and the players out there all loving each other and fighting for each other and playing for each other, that adds something a little bit different to it. And the Bulls have been a different team so far this year. Let's see if it's going to maintain as we go forth into the season. But so far, I think the Bulls have passed the early test. A lot of them. Still some questions on some things that we can improve on. But the Bulls have passed those tests. Let me know what you guys think down below. Make sure you guys are following the show at Bulls Central Pod. You can send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns. BullsCentralPod@gmail.com. And then lastly, if you want to leave a text message and or voicemail for the mailbag, the number to do so, 773-270-2799. We are the number one spot for everything Chicago Bulls related, but that is thanks to you lovely and beautiful people. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Make sure you love you guys. Go Bulls. See red, y'all. Peace.
This has been a presentation of the Break Media.